I was given early access to Season 2.5, and of course the very first thing I wanted to do was to play Ultron, and I got some time with him, and I'm a little concerned about how he's going to fit into the meta. Today I'm going to talk about Ultron and his kit. I'm going to give you all of my thoughts regarding how powerful or effective he's going to be, or maybe the lack thereof. I'm going to talk about some good combos as well as his general categorization towards the end of the video here, so you guys can check that out as well. I kind of think he's not going to be that great. Let me talk about what I'm going about here. So first of all, he is very much a strategist. He is not a support in the true sense of the word. His healing is actually quite low. His healing only comes from one ability, and while that ability is an AoE and it can just stay out for as long as it doesn't get destroyed, it does have very obvious counters in that it can get destroyed. It's pretty brainless. It's kind of similar to how Mantis might operate. In fact, you're going to see a lot of Mantis comparisons to him here, in that his healing doesn't require you to actually do anything extra. You can just simply slap it on a target and you're pretty much good to go. Just, again, very similar to how Mantis might operate. The difference here is that it's AoE, whereas Mantis has to focus on individual targets and she can pick and choose how she wants to spend her damage boost versus her healing. Ultron just simply picks whatever target he thinks is most likely to not get his healing drone destroyed, and what character he thinks is going to be the most valuable target to choose overall, and then that's pretty much it. He just simply cycles the other abilities when they are available to him. Imperative Patch seems to be about 20 to 30-ish healing over time, healing per second-ish, which is pretty good. It's slightly above average for a good portion of the healing cast. But again, the problem is that it's not that hard to actually shut it down because it can be shot. And also the healing is slow enough that it's not going to be able to do anything like allow a tank to get out of a bad situation. In fact, Ultron seems very much built for a low tank composition build altogether. If your team has a lot of DPS characters or support characters, Ultron's going to see a lot of value. However, if you're really leaning in on a more traditional 2-2-2, I think Ultron's probably not going to be the greatest pick unless you decide to choose him as a DPS, in which case you're probably going to be doing okay. Again, a triple support meta seems to be Ultron's niche. So let's talk about some of his strengths. Let's talk about some of his weaknesses. His greatest strength is, of course, his flight, something that allows him to completely shut down a good portion of the cast. Basically, any character in the game that is very heavily brawl-coded, characters that don't have a lot of ways of getting airborne or have any form of range, Ultron basically completely shuts down. His Encephalo Ray burst damage is enough to 2 burst 250 HP targets and 3 burst 300 plus with very little extra effort. The damage drop-off also seems to be pretty small, meaning that he can snipe targets from a very far distance away. In fact, he's kind of more sniper coded than he is anything else. For example, his Imperative Patch, the little healing drone, can get up to what it seems about 40 meters away from him before it finally goes down, meaning Ultron's likely to be somebody who's just staying in the back and keeping things alive and dealing damage without really needing to think anything else of it. And that comes even more so from his second ability, Imperative Firewall. This grants anybody who's within a short distance of either you, the Ultron, or the Imperative Patch drone, a 75 HP overshield. This 75 HP health can be pretty helpful. The problem with it is that it doesn't last very long. For as helpful as 75 HP is, it's not enough to survive most fights. Again, appreciated, but if it lasted longer than what I'm clocking in at about 4 to 5 seconds, it would be better. But because it's not doing that, it's hard to justify its use as a tool other than a, oh crap, somebody help me button. Again, this can be multiplied over multiple targets, which would make him theoretically a lot better, but I'm wondering in which situation this is actually useful for him. At which point are you in a gunfight and you're thinking to yourself, you know what, I need my entire team to just be able to take an extra bullet or two against most of the higher burst damage targets. I just don't see it happening in most regards. In a one-on-one, sure, but you're not in a one-on-one in that point, right? You've got help. All right, his last ability is, in my opinion, the most interesting, and that is Dynamic Flight. This, on paper, is just similar to how the Human Torch or maybe Iron Man would boost around, but the difference here is that it gives him a 50 HP overshield. This is his defense. This is how he gets out of danger. His dynamic flight allows him to move significantly faster, and that 50 extra HP allows him to get just far enough away that it's going to force the target to change up their tactics. If he's within close range, let's say where he is within melee range, that dynamic flight can suddenly change his positioning to make it a problem for them. It's one of the stronger things in his kit, ironically, because it's probably the only thing he has to really realistically defend himself. Everything else sort of operates at a loss unless it is hitting multiple people. So of course, Ultron is absolutely going to be played with teams that are going to bunch up. Sort of a death ball comp would be the most expected here. Does that make sense? All right, his next and last ability is Rage of Ultron. This is his ultimate. Ironically, the damage of this is lower than his primary fire, but it trades off that it also gets a bit of healing as well as splash, so it makes it very easy to keep targets alive. The healing is pretty good. It's nothing to really write home about. It does come in burst, which means that there's a period of time where if somebody's trying to burst something down, let's say the Punisher has a shotgun in CQC, he wouldn't have too much trouble, especially if they had help. And again, the damage isn't good enough to justify it as a big kill move other than just the simple ease of not needing to aim at the target as much as compared to his primary fire. His team up, I feel like, might end up getting incorporated into his whole kit, because right now it almost feels necessary to make him operate like a true support. This team up is with Iron Man, and it is Nano Ray. This can be activated similar to how Iron Man operates with his overcharge and such, where it'll give him a brief period of time where his primary fire becomes sort of like Moira, her ult, in that it will both deal damage and heal targets over time. This Nano Ray seems to have all right healing that seems to be right above average, but again, because of its long cooldown time and its fact that you have to keep it directly on the target the entire time, it's not something that you can just fire and forget like many of his other abilities. It really changes how he operates. He basically forces him into playing a more shoot the fish in the barrel style of playstyle rather than anything else. So let's talk about some of the ways that he can get the best use. Because he doesn't require a lot of thought, if you were to slot him as a DPS and just simply throw imperative patches as he's healing turret, drone on targets as you're going about, it will probably be the best way to use him. Again, his damage is, I cannot stress this enough, very good. Possibly one of the best damage characters as a support in the game, barring a Luna Snow shooting a standing still target and hitting nothing but headshots. Yeah, right? Like, he doesn't need to hit headshots to hit this kind of damage. His flight completely shuts down targets that would normally have very easy times against a lot of the supports, which means that he can be a great counter pick, but you're going to have to understand that you're trading off a good portion of your healing. His best ways to counter him are unfortunately a little easy, in that you can simply shoot his drone or damage his drone in order to get rid of it. It also means that you generally don't want to put it on tanks, as tanks are going to be very easy to shut that down, so likely you're going to be putting this on supports slightly behind the tanks so that the tanks can also cover and protect the drone. His healing is pretty dynamic in that it can switch between targets relatively easy, meaning he's going to be able to keep a team topped off pretty darn well, which is exactly why that triple support would work great for him, because he can absolutely fill in the gaps where some of the other teams could potentially struggle. Some of the other supports would likely struggle against healing multiple targets all at once and really making sure that they're absolutely topped off. Lastly, he really struggles with having a true personal defense. While many of the other supports have some way of doing something to get a target off of him, Ultron really can either run away or just simply try to kill them. He's slightly better off than Adam Warlock in that obviously he has actual mobility, but also similar in a lot of ways in that he has nothing to stun or to push a target back or to absolutely guarantee an escape, because the dynamic flight is good, but it's not the hardest to track. Personally, I'm hoping that he's going to see a little bit more buffs in his healing department, maybe making Nano Ray into a default part of his kit, because as it stands right now, he's fun, a lot of fun. I love playing him. He's super DPS coded, which makes my DPS brain very happy, but I just don't know if he's really going to have a place in the game as it stands. Of course, I could completely eat my words, only time will tell. We'll see if he ends up getting any new personal survival buffs in the future, or if maybe his ultimate gets a little bit touched up, because right now it's a little bit lacking in both the healing and the damage department. But Let me know what your thoughts are in the comments down below. Again, I don't think we're going to see no Ultron players. I just think he's not going to quite see as much play for most ranks. But again, triple support's a thing. Let me know what your thoughts are. Bless your faces, and deuces.